Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is November 6th, and this is another SIG CLI bi-weekly meeting. My name is Maciej, and I'll be your host today. So today we have pretty short agenda, but I still wanted to meet because we will be skipping the next meeting, and I should probably add that one to the announcements. So the next meeting in 2 weeks on November 20th, if I'm counting correctly, will be canceled due to KubeCon going on. I do hope to see, if not all, then at least most of you over there. I'm gonna definitely encourage you to check out the two official sessions that we will be holding. One will be during the main conference, which is the 90-minute session where we will be talking about literally everything related to kubectl and SIG CLI overall. We're hoping to cover a little bit of the past 12 to 18 months, what we've achieved. We're hoping to shed some lights on the future of the SIG CLI, as well as answer all the questions and doubts that people are having with regards to SIG CLI. The another session that I'm going to encourage you to attend is happening during the Contributor Summit, and we are going to have a 90-minute session where we will be showcasing how to work with kubectl, meaning how to develop commands, how to fix bugs, how to write plugins, etc., etc. So if you will be part of the Contributor Summit, definitely check this one out as well. Ahmed put an information about his Crew talk. So if you don't know, Crew is a plugin manager, and we will also cover plugins for sure during the big session. But Ahmed is going to present a separate session just with regards to Crew. So if you're during KubeCon, make sure to visit those talks, or step by and just say hi, or throw whatever you want to throw at us at the same time. Although I hope it won't be rotten tomatoes or old eggs or stuff like that. Anyhow, let's move on to the main topics. The first one is a continuation from the previous session from 2 weeks ago. It's the kubectl debug. Lee and I had a very short conversation about the future. We kind of agreed on the scope of kubectl debug, that we would like to have full, let's call it artillery, to approach any possible use case that application developer, but as well as the cluster administrators might have when it comes to debugging. Lee, can you talk a little bit about the idea that we want to put into CAP? I do hope it'll just happen over the next couple of days, or in the worst case, weeks. But for sure, 118 is the goal for this one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I kind of started thinking of kube control debug as a facility for things that are higher level than container debugging. I mean, I've been focusing mainly on pod. There's two ways that I can think of that people might want to debug pod. And one is attaching an ephemeral container to the running pod, so just sort of inserting a container in the simple use case. And then the other is maybe people want to change some other sections of the pod spec and restart it in place. Maybe that's useful for switching to a debugging image of your binary or something like that. I think there's some equivalent functionality in OpenShift that had been mentioned early on as sort of prior art. And then another one that I hadn't thought of at all, but seems really useful, is debugging a node. So creating maybe a privileged container in the host namespaces so you can see what's going on with the node without having to track it down and SSH. I wanted to ask if there were any other ideas and just sort of open the floor to general discussion or any questions about the ephemeral containers use case that may have arisen while I wasn't here.
For the use case that you mentioned, having a debug image, this also covers the case when you are trying to debug some kind of a connectivity issues that your application is struggling with, or configuration issues that you haven't envisioned, such as how to access a different service, whether the DB that you set up under this is actually available through these environment variables, through these bits that you hoped for, because it is sometimes, like you said, valuable to have the application with extra debugging, but also for debugging the connectivity with other components in the cluster.
I do envision the ephemeral containers for being particularly useful for network connectivity debugging too, since they're always in the same network namespace. And I did also want to mention that process namespace targeting is a feature that I hope will land soon in alpha. I have a PR out for that as well. That will allow you to create an ephemeral container for pods that don't share process namespaces, create an ephemeral container in a targeted container namespace.
And a very important use case for debugging Node is what we do in OpenShift 4 specifically, is that the nodes of the cluster by default are not reachable through an external IP address. So you need to set up a bastion host usually. If you want to, and that requires some additional steps, but if you want to have a quick access OC debug node, which was available in OC for quite a bit, is a possible option for doing that. And yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts, suggestions, or questions with regards to this proposal?
Cool. So I think my next steps then will be to finish writing, filling out the different sections of the KEP. There's still plenty of to-do items in there. But hopefully we can finish that during the code freeze. Would be convenient.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to have any co-authors if anyone is interested in working on this more. There's plenty of work here to do, way more than I'll be able to do in any short period of time. Please just ping the feature.
You've mentioned in the discussion that we had earlier today, reaching out to, I can't remember his name, but maybe reaching out to the authors of the kubectl plugins, maybe worth pinging them at least in the KEP would be beneficial, and figuring out whether they are either interested in co-authoring the proposal or maybe interested in helping with the implementation. I'll definitely devote some time to review the PAP and suggest options. Not sure if that you can consider myself as a co-author. I think, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to have if you would be willing to contribute. That would be Fantastic. And I did ping, I'm not sure how to pronounce this GitHub handle, LA, the owner of the kube control debug, also got a positive response there. So hopefully that'll work out as
Cool,
well.
perfect. Does anyone else have any questions regarding this topic?
Nope. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks
a
everyone.
lot.
Hopefully we'll see the beginnings of an alpha command in the next release.
Awesome.
Vern, sorry to interrupt. So I was actually hoping, we're proposing to bring up some future kubectl development projects in the Contributor Summit workshop at KubeCon, and one of them was your debug efforts. And so I just wanted to run that past you and make sure you thought that was okay. That we're going to we're proposing to show your typical kubectl development, but in addition to showing that, we want to highlight some of the newer efforts, and this is one of the newer efforts. I just wanted to run that past you, make sure that you're, find out what you thought about that.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm unfortunately I won't be able to make it, but I'd love to. But this will be a particularly good topic for that because it's so easy to split out the work for the debugging different types of resources and the different workflows.
I'll be there for sure, and I think I can guide people how we can divide the work into pieces. So I can be the connecting person for between Lee and the person that will be interested in helping out, or the persons that will be interested in helping out, definitely.
Fantastic. That's a great idea. Thanks for doing that.
Are there any thoughts about sort of the larger landscape of debugging? So log analysis, you mentioned connectivity analysis, or that is there some sort of bigger plan for the story there? Or is this more focused on just the attach aspect of debugging?
My opinion is I'd love to see a way that we could implement this would be sort of a suite of debugging container images that could be shared in some fashion. I mean, I guess it's sort of similar to plugins, but like a common toolkit that could be referenced by the debug command. But I haven't really thought that through.
Okay.
I mean, there was work coming from SIG API machinery over the past, I don't know, like a week or 2 weeks ago, where David Eads proposed an endpoint for getting logs from a cluster that has a broken certificates. So currently the logs command has an additional flag which allows bypassing the security, the certificate check. And this should allow you to get the logs from the running container. But this is more towards when the infrastructure is failing due to some certificate issues, such as the kubelet is using either outdated or unverified certificate. So there are connectivity issues between the Kube API server and the kubelet, and getting logs in normal circumstances would not be possible with this new approach of bypassing the check. We will expose that as an opt-in. So you have to specifically say that, yes, I'm pretty sure that I want to read the data out of that, bypassing the security checks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
this, in combination with what we are proposing as debug, I think the debug, at least the kubectl debug, is more towards, well, more towards, I think, the application developers, maintainers that are running their apps. Although the debugging node part will be towards the cluster administrators, cluster operators.
Something that could be useful, not so much as part of kube control debug, but more as a use of ephemeral containers, would be to attach some sort of inspection container image that could connect to broader debugging tool. But you can imagine that, like, you run this, it targets a particular process and extracts its log files and displays it to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of aspects to debugging. There's the remote attach, there's log analysis, there's schema validation. So there's a lot of things you typically have to throw at the problem in order to actually debug it. And so, as it's phrased, kubectl debug sounds like it's a broader topic than it might be focusing on now. But
I mean, I would prefer to stay away from defining what the contents of the debugging image could be, because I don't want to limit any use case. And being able to pass any kind of image will allow the both operators as well as the developers to tailor the image per their particular needs. So they will debug using their own either app development tooling, or in case of a cluster operator, it will be inspection tooling. So he will debug, get into that container immediately, and then he can just, do any kind of introspection that they desire. Of course, you can say that it is still possible using kubectl run plus interactive. Fine, but I think we can bake some additional functionality into the debug command itself.
Makes sense. I understand now. Thanks.
That's my take on this topic. Okay, cool. I think we devoted sufficient amount of time to debug. Thanks once again, Lee, for putting this together. From what I was talking with Sean had some ideas with regards to the contributor summit that he wanted to talk through with the broader SIG. Sean, you want to talk us through?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, let me just give the info on the Contributor Summit workshop. At the Contributor Summit, we have a 90-minute workshop where we hope to address or give us some information on kubectl development, and that'll include, several different sections that has slides and code labs, and as most of us probably already know, there's quite a bit of common structures and conventions to the dozens and dozens of different kubectl commands. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop a more robust kubectl development community, and try to get some more reviewers and approvers, and update our reviewers and approvers lists maybe afterwards, so that we can we will address the kind of the common cases for kubectl development, so that we can actually have this stronger development community and lower the or kind of address the hurdles for the learning curve for kubectl development. So the initial outline that I've come up with has kind of 4 sections where we talk about Cobra and options and flags in one section, and then we dig into the client kind of kubectl's builder, but also we would talk about the REST client, the dynamic client, client Go. And in that discussion, we would also talk about different types of objects, like runtime object, unstructured, the strongly typed objects, and so anyway, each one of those sections, we're kind of hoping to have a quick presentation and then a code lab for those four, and then we are hoping to, once we've kind of finished up on this legacy kubectl development area, kind of open it up and start digging into, or at least addressing and bringing up kind of the future kubectl development, including verbs debug efforts, but also kind of observability efforts to add headers into the kubectl command so that we can scrape them in logs and find out actually what the kubectl usage is. So yeah, I guess I've discussed many different areas here. What I'm going to do is add a link to this, to our notes that includes the outline, and I'd like to get feedback from the community on what you think about this effort. I think one of the most important things about this contributor summit is that since we're going to be videotaping it, recording it, anybody who wants to get into kubectl development or core SIG CLI development can actually watch this, and hopefully they would, again, be able to bypass the learning curve hurdles and be significantly more productive faster. So why don't let me add this, the outline link to these notes, and I'd love to hear any of your guys' feedback on details, or even the high level, what you think should be addressed. What are the most important parts of our SIG CLI development that you think should be addressed? Let me find that and add that. So our outline is right here. Does anybody have any thoughts on what I've described so far? Sorry, I didn't. Probably should have been more organized in that.
No, I think the plan that you outlined is very good. My only worry would be that if we are able to fit that in 90 minutes, from my own experience, I know that the code tours that I've done in the past, something that I thought will take me only 10 to 15 minutes went up to about 30 minutes because I was able to fill in easily my entire slot. And that was with me just talking and showing all the bits that I already knew. So I'm slightly worried that given that we might get there a group of people that won't be very much familiar with the flow, and that's completely fine, I think, because that's the more novice people we will get during that session, the better we will be able to cover the basics. So the recording will be more useful to newcomers to the SIG CLI, as in it will help them jumpstart quickly, and then at the same time, hopefully we will be able to grow the entire contributor base for SIG CLI reasonably fast. But overall, I think it's definitely worthy.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that one of the sections is like kubectl unit testing, unit testing the client, because that actually can be quite involved. You're kind of digging down into the low level HTTP stuff. So maybe we could, drop off the last, unit testing part if we want to spend more time on the future development projects. To be honest, I'm not even, I'm not even quite sure how we were going to address those future development projects or how much time we want to spend on it. Maybe some of that was going to be asking who was interested in what after having a general overview of here's kind of the way we want to go, and then maybe just getting together and introducing people so that they could meet each other face to face and maybe get an informal team on who was going to do what. I'm not 100% sure how we were going to address what the future development projects are, other than just giving a brief overview of what we think they are. For the first one, Phil already has a cap on the observability and the X headers, and it actually, we'll have to probably work pretty closely with API machinery on that one. Let me know what you guys think about the balance of, legacy kubectl development versus future kubectl development. And if we don't have enough time, then, I'm going to propose that it's weighted towards the legacy kubectl development, just because this is going to be recorded and used as our kind of introduction to kubectl and even SIG CLI development.
Yeah, I totally support that one, because we can talk through future development during the next session. That's one option. And the other thing, we are covering what we are working on as we go during the biweekly meetings. So I would prefer we focus on how to work with kubectl. We can maybe spend some time shortly going through the processes that has to happen when you're working on a feature. Just throwing a bunch of links to where caps are held, what is a cap, and stuff like that, so that people that are new have the initial jumpstart very quick. I know that for a lot of people, the initial bits, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? Oh, what is a cap that people are talking about? And those, simple FAQ for beginners would be much more valuable than even as a written doc that we could share during the session or even post-session, and having both the recording and that kind of FAQ. And if someone will be actually interested in helping us writing this down as an article for Kubernetes blog, or as a document, that could be even a completely valid community doc that will be living in the SIG CLI directory.
I think, one thing I suggested to Sean was that if you're a new contributor getting started, there's kind of two, or even if you're an experienced contributor, but if you're trying to contribute, there's kind of two pieces you need. The first is like, what should I be working on? And the second is, how do I do it? And of the two, how do I do it is something that is possible for people to figure out on their own. Like, it might not be fun. It kind of depends on your experience level and in the particular task. But like, if you sat down for a week and you were determined, you could do it, right? On your own. What should you be working on, and what are we going to accept, and what is likely to get PR reviewed, and what is likely to pass the sort of what we put in kube control and whatnot? There's no way for you to do that independently. And so if our goal is to help people become either new contributors or take on more complex projects that aren't just like one-off bug fixes, but actually contribute more substantially to the project, that helping them, seeding them with the right work is the absolutely critical. And so I think like where you find work from KEPs is great. I think that we are not so organized that you could still just go to the KEP place and be like, this, I can pick this one up, right? Because I don't even think I could go there and say like, oh yeah, this one we should work on and this one we shouldn't, like without some discussion. So actually curating a backlog prior going into the meeting and saying like, here is the list of items, like it's a concrete list of 10, right, or something. And then having contributors work as groups on those things. So rather than just mapping one-to-one individuals to tasks, saying, okay, the three of you work together and amongst the three of you kind of figure out how you want to tackle this task. Was what I had suggested as the strategy coming out of there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I just realized that something that is completely missing from this, and I would not even say that it requires a significant portion of time, but it's still worthy, is covering how you can submit your fixes or improvements to our kubectl book, which is covering how to use, which is basically documentation. If there are people that are interested in documenting kubectl, that is completely valid approach, and that will be super valuable for this SIG as well. If we can get people that will be interested in maintaining the book and improving the kubectl book. The framework is already built. The framework is already there. Phil put it up together some time ago. So if you know how to, and you have the ability to write, that is perfectly valid contributions that we are missing currently. I know it falls under the SIG docs, but I think kubectl book is something that we have significant ownership of. So being able to show people how to contribute to that part of the our projects is also perfectly valid.
Thanks for the plug.
Okay, so if I heard Phil correctly, he's voting more towards weighing it towards future kubectl development. So if that's the case, then we can we can reduce the scope of the legacy kubectl development. I think that developing the slides in the code lab for more areas rather than fewer would be fine. It's just that once we get to a certain time point in that contributor summit, we can move on to future kubectl development, see how far we could get and prioritizing the most important stuff first so that we can drop off some parts at the end if need be. What do you guys think of that strategy?
To clarify, what I meant is grounding what we're doing in concrete things that we are actually trying to get done, which might be in legacy code bases or new code bases or whatever.
Cool. Well, you all have the link now, and I'm not sure if it's open for comments or for editing, but either way, please give me feedback on this outline on the doc, and sooner rather than later, since I'm going to be actually starting on the slides in the code labs now.
Okay, cool. Unless there are other questions or suggestions with regards to the contributor session, I think we can move on to the stand-up section. I see that Crew and Kui put their stand-ups. Crew, Ahmed, you want to talk about? I see you're on the call.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. So we have identified a security vulnerability, and I'm contacting the Kubernetes security team to see if we need to go through their disclosure program or should we just handle it ourselves internally within the project. Nick has a PR adding symbolic links to tar and zip files to make the Electron-based plugins work. I'm planning to hold on to that until we get a security review internally from the GK security team has actually offered to help with the pull request as well as like consultation on symlinks in general. Yeah, and we are at 58 plugins, 2 more in the pipeline.
Yeah, symlinks are tough. From my own experience, if I can comment on that one, that symlinks themselves were the source of our biggest issues with kubectl copy command, where for the past year or so, we've been involved in each and every single one of them, including handling symlinks. So definitely I can advise extra caution on the symlink handling. It can easily get pretty nasty. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably CC you on the PR if you want to take a look quickly.
Yeah, send me the PR in the Slack.
Okay.
I'll try to look at it either today or later this week.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, on to Kui in that case. Nick?
Thanks. Yeah, and thanks, Amit, for the review and Maciej. Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like for Electron builds on Mac OS, symlinks are used fairly extensively for the frameworks, to link together the frameworks. It doesn't affect Linux and Windows. It's just a Mac issue, but it is an issue there. I think the tarballs explode by about a factor of 3 if we dereference all the symlinks. So it's a non-trivial issue. But I also agree, yeah, symlinks are a danger zone, so let's be careful. So in preparation for Crew supporting symlinks, we've been doing work to factor out the Kubernetes visualization support that up until now has been inside of the big CUI mono repo. There's now a standalone repo that I've linked in the Google Docs that you can try today. So you can git clone that, npm CI, and npm start, and you'll have CUI come up within about 10 seconds or so, 15 seconds. And then you can do all your kube commands, visualizations. That client you can now separately build to a standalone Electron client. There are build targets for targeting a Crew tarball, which bundles everything up nicely to package it up perfectly for Crew. So we're mostly geared up for enabling the kube visualization as a Crew plugin, pending the symlink, the important symlink work. To sort of flesh out some of this work, we've started on a few other prototype plugins. Log visualization is one that's obviously been in frequent demand. The Kube UI base plugin has some very primitive support for offering log support, log visualizations. One of the goals that maybe we can shoot for with a log UI plugin is just to consolidate. I know there's a lot of work out there for log analysis, aggregation, filtering, and even visualization. So maybe we can start consolidating some of that and offering new stuff if needed, so that we can have quick pop-up support for answering questions about log contents, visualizing log timelines, things like that. So I've linked those two in the docs. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any stand-ups that they want to share with? Okay, hearing none. With that, I'm going to close the call. Thank you very much. I hope to see all of you, or at least majority of you, in 2 weeks in San Diego. And the regular meetings will happen in 4 weeks time frame. So if you have anything that you want to land before the code freeze, just feel free to ping myself and others in the Slack. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.